Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Sana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we're going to be taking a look at two important stories. The first is in reference to a very important aspect of Pakistan's economic recovery, and that is, of course, talks with the IMF that have already begun, starting today and will last for about 2 weeks. The IMF mission, of course, is going to be visiting important leaders, including the finance minister and others, and holding negotiations on another extended fund facility that Pakistan will be engaging in negotiations with. And after the SBA, this is extremely important given the current economic scenario of the country and the upcoming budget, and of course the new government also in place. So it's going to be a big challenge as to what it is that Pakistan will actually be looking for and hope to get from this particular negotiation, and then what aspect will then further conduct the way that Pakistan will be taking measures towards economic recovery, and of course the decisions that the new government will have to make in this regard. So we're going to be taking a look at where we stand today in terms of the economic indicators, especially after the SBA, and what sort of aspects will be important within these negotiations, and what measures will Pakistan then have to take, and what that means for the people of Pakistan, and of course the businessmen in the country dealing with the economic pressures that of course have existed for quite some time now. So we're going to be taking a look at that in our first segment of the show today and try to understand what it is that's happening right now and where we're headed. Our next segment is going to take a look at the foreign minister's visit to China. He's going to be there for a foreign ministers summit that is going to be held in China from the 13th to the 16th of May. And this, of course, is the first visit by this foreign minister after the elections earlier this year to China. And so we're going to be seeing what sort of aspects are going to come out of this and how this will further strengthen the relationship between the two countries, particularly in terms of trade and investment ties in this very critical moment in Pakistan's economic history. And so we're going to be taking a look at that in the last segment of the show today. For this and more, as always, I've been joined in the studios by senior analyst Farrukh Pitafi and Raja Faisal. I've also been joined online by senior economist Dr. Khaqan Najeeb. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. And of course, having you is always a pleasure. But this, of course, is a very, very important point in our history. And I'm glad that you took time to talk to us about where we're headed and what is happening at the moment with the IMF. So considering, of course, that now we're moving forward towards a larger program with the IMF after the SBA, and we of course have the new political government, the new finance ministry in order, and the current conditions have relatively improved compared to previous indicators. What exactly do you hope to come out of these talks, and what will be, you think, the major aspects that will need to be considered within these negotiations? How easy or difficult will this journey be?
Sana, Pakistan's economy is currently behaving very typically as an economy would behave when engaged with the fund. Pakistan's reserves, which had gone down beyond $4 billion, are back up to about $9 billion. Pakistan's current account, which last year in the first 9 months was hovering around $4.1 billion, is now curtailed to $500 million in this fiscal year when we see the data for the first 9 months. Pakistan's inflation, albeit still at a higher rate of about 17%, has come down from 38%. As you've seen the rupee stabilize, the rupee gain value. Our imports are curtailed. Our exports are pretty much where they were. They haven't changed much because in Pakistan's case, I think the rupee movement alone is not impacting exports as much as our productivity and other issues are, our cost of doing business, our ease of doing business. So it's pretty much there. So this is the overall scenario, but with the adjustments that we did with the fund, we've reached a certain level of macro stability. I think it's a nascent stability. These three things, the buildup of reserves, the current account coming down, and inflation downward trajectory can largely or broadly be described as macro stabilization, and that we are seeing certainly. But the other part is to get to all this, you have to slow the economy. The monetary rate, the monetary policy has been tightened and kept tightened despite the fact that the inflation had fallen and the negative real interest rate had been seen for the last month or so, but we still are at 22%. We are maintaining an exchange rate which is market based. We are doing fiscal consolidation, taking some measures on the taxation policy side. All these have had an impact on slowing private sector demand, on slowing private sector credit. And what you've seen is that the economy is now in a mode where we are going to grow around 2%, not even the growth that our population would do. And this also because we've seen bumper agriculture and a growth of 5% in the first 6 months data that we have seen. So this is exactly where the economy stands. Now, someone can ask, then why do we want to go to the IMF? We can keep doing this, and that's fine. So here's the most important message that the $22 billion that you needed this year and the 22 to $25 billion gross financing needs of Pakistan in the next couple of years cannot be fulfilled without an IMF umbrella because let's be very clear the CD of the ADB, Pakistan CD, the country director said we would want to fund Pakistan but only under an IMF umbrella. This is an unfortunate position, but that's the ground reality. The 22 to $25 billion, and again, I don't want I know many people sound an alarm on this number. So let me just say this. Most of this money is bilateral, 10 to $12 billion, almost half, which needs to be reprofiled. We will not be able to pay Saudi Arabia next year. We will not be able to pay the safe deposit of China. Similarly, UAE, similarly, Qatar. But when the IMF umbrella is there, they would roll over this for another year. Similarly, the multilateral flows, as I've just quoted the ADB chief, this was in one of the conferences abroad that I heard this comment, and that's fine in an interview. I understand. So we will be able to return the $5 to $6 billion approximately that we do to multilaterals, but get funding of approximately the same kind of amount. But then we would need new funding also. And Sana, the part which should still worry us is that the commercial access of the Chinese or the Middle Eastern banks has not come through despite the funds program, and are also the the bonds that we launch abroad are still not accessible to us. We are trying to do a panda, but panda in China is a very small amount. This is 200 $300 million. I remember that I had investigated doing panda, but then the amount was so little. But maybe now the little amounts also count. So the authorities want to do panda, and that's fine. But our rating has not improved despite being in an IMF program. I remember when we did the 13 program, our rating had come back very quickly, but maybe it was an SBA, and as we get into an EFF, things would improve. So this is where the country stand. Now we've clarified why we need to go to the IMF, um, and they have mentioned some things which I'm not comfortable, and maybe we could have said to them that there is the reputational risk of Pakistan, there's the political risk of Pakistan, Pakistan's capability to pay back. I think when the engagement with the fund is a given, and we have said that we would do it, these all things would fall in line once we engage with the fund, and the umbrella is there. I think the key question for me is how prepared are the authorities, which you were asking, to come up with a program which the fund is willing to finance but is good for the country, to the gives us the macro stability cementing, but gives us the space to do much more than rising prices or monetary tightening, or rising policy rates in the country on the FBR, but gives us more space to do the deeper work. Fund
Right.
only gives you space, the rest is up to you.
Right. Dr. Saab, I'm glad that you have actually identified the core needs why we have to engage with the fund. Now, let us talk about the choreography of the talks and then anatomy of the package that might emerge. And finally, the timeline also. I want to understand what are going to be the demands and then how Pakistan actually proposes to meet them. Particularly, one concern that we keep on hearing is that the fund keeps on demanding to increase taxes on the, or at least remove slabs from the salaried class. I think that working class is perhaps the most depressed section of the country at this moment, because somehow the government of Pakistan finds a way to provide some kind of relief to the lowest class, but not to the middle class, not to the working class. But that is a huge concern. How much can the working class take it? Now, that said, I want to then understand what will be the quantum of funds commitment, what kind of money that we are talking about, and finally, if these talks actually continue, for how long it is going to actually take for the deal to mature.
And Dr. Khaqan, if you can also add to that, with reference to where we stand today and what you have said earlier, it seems that this negotiation absolutely has to succeed, and there is no other option for the country. And if that's the case, does that not put us on a weak end of the bargaining chip, and does that not also then influence the way that these discussions will go?
So both of you have asked, I think, very, very fundamental question. So let's start with Sana's first. Sana, Pakistan has $9 billion of reserves. We have built some credibility in terms of doing some of the things that were agreed with the fund. Fund is a no-brainer. I think going to the fund is a given. But what is not given, Sana, is how much can we negotiate a package that is useful to give us the space that is needed to do the real surgery of the economy. So, I want to tell the nation so that 3 years from now, they don't get hold of my interview and say that you said you should go to the fund, but 3 years have passed and we are still in this macro stabilization and you're still saying that the growth architecture hasn't changed. Now, this is the most important conversation I've ever had with you guys. We do the fund, it gives you the breathing space. The rest is up to you. Sana, it really depends how well prepared you are to be able to negotiate with the fund. On the public finances, because this is the forte of the fund, the public finances, meaning the fiscal consolidation, which means primary surplus plus, a fiscal path going down. So not many people, and this would now also sink in what Pitafi Saab was saying, that what are those demands and what will happen. So not many people have this data, but I'm going to still share with you. So here's the deal. IMF did a tadat on Pakistan. That's the tax assessment report that they do. They did this in October 21. So they have this report. I've read this report, and they identified in Pakistan's case what is the issue. And so I had a look at the report in detail, and here's what they said. They said Pakistan's weak risk management, Pakistan's return filing enforcement is weak. They are low on the time of the filing of the tax returns. The audit section is weak, and there are delays in tax dispute resolution. You've heard the Prime Minister say this number of times, the last one. So this is the Tadat report. So they have a handle on where you stand. IMF then came up with a mission in November, December, I think, and then came up with a TA report. Honestly, I think this TA report should be made public. There should be people should be commenting on that. My understanding, and I will use that word carefully, Patafi Bhai, is that they are asking you nearly 2% of the taxation measures in the duration of the program. That translates today's GDP, 106,000, that translates into about 2,000 of those measures. What you said about the personal income tax, so yes, on the personal income tax, they think that the salaried and the non-salaried are at different rates right now. The salaried have a concessional rate. The non-salaried, the companies, the AOPs have a higher rate. So they're saying bring them on the same rate. This is where the whole discussion, Patafi Saab, is happening on raising the lowering in terms of the tax slabs, and that raises the rates. So here's my counter argument, which the authorities should make. So this refers to Sana's question. If you're well prepared, you should tell them that when I apply a formula of the inflation number In June 22, if Pitafi Saab's buying power was 100,000 rupees, in the 2 years of inflation, in June 24, that power is down to 61,000 rupees. That's an actual number. It's not something I'm making. So I need to really raise my threshold of 50,000 personal income tax bracket where I've given a concession to 70,000 so that the person pays less tax and the buying power is there. So what am I trying to explain here? So what I'm trying to explain is, Sana, that the preparation that you do on the alternatives that you want to put on the table. Then they're also asking you that you need to think about your sales tax management. You need to, go away from the kind of concessions you have. There'll be many concessions on food, pharmacy, and others on agriculture that we've given. So we need to have a discussion. So we need to give an alternative path. So here's, someone talking to you and telling you what the IMF is thinking. I think with the authorities, they should also now start talking about what they are thinking. They are smart folks at the FPR, at the finance ministry. They must be thinking some counter proposals. They must have a detailed review of the report that IMF must have given to them. So if they have any counter proposals, which they must, as this is what we used to do in the 13-16 program. And I always said we ran that program largely on giving counter proposals to IMF and convincing the good folks from the good universities of the world that, instead of doing this, let's do this. Then they're, besides that, they're also thinking about excise, the changes on, for example, e-cigarettes are not in the excise, so they want to bring that in the excise, so on and so forth. So then they're thinking about taxation on the small and medium enterprises. So they should be thinking on our side how we want to counter that. Then the tax policy unit.
But just counter to your counter, because every time the government says that we have to take tough decisions, I tell you from experience that the working class actually gulps and worries that they are going to be asked to take the tough decisions, right? But regarding this lab business, is it possible that while negotiating with the fund, Pakistan can say that instead of fixing a rupee number, because the rupee keeps on fluctuating, fix a dollar number so that we know what kind of things we are dealing with. If there is inflation, we can actually maintain that, and even if rupee weakens, we can still manage to take care of the slab.
So, Pitafi Saab, I mean, no one can disagree that there are tax measures in terms of policy improvement, in terms of administrative improvement, in terms of enforcement, in terms of tax gaps, in terms of the concessions and exemptions that we've given. But the key is what you're mentioning, that we should try that the 2,200 billion rupees concessions to the people that don't deserve these concessions is where we this time move. But that is for us to convince the IMF. I will always maintain this, that the country authorities are the principal holders of data, be it Pakistan, be it Sri Lanka, be it Egypt, the countries that I know of and I have knowledge of. All these countries, and my humble advice to them has always been that you have the country data. You can best convince them that what is it that you can do, what is it that is better for the economy, what creates efficiency in the economy, the tax efficiency that we talk about, the equity, the fairness, the sustainability. Whereas wide ranging things can't be done in the 3 years, what is it that we can do in the 3 years in an economy which is already, under pressure because of taxation in the manufacturing and the PIT? And how can we move to the unproductive sectors of the economy? I mean, you would have to tax the retailers, right? It's not fair that we had a Tajir Dost scheme and 70 people registered, and now the number I hear is 650 or 700 out of 3.2 million. Who would then trust you? This is the reputational risk that the fund talks about when they write. It hurts me when they write it, but the key thing is that we were not able to do that. We have not been able to increase our tax filing this year. I mean, these are all facts. On the POS, we have not been able to move beyond what, 15,000 on the track and trace. And I remember initiating track and trace. My wife helped the team go to Turkey to see it. The chairman and the whole team was there. And today, when I talk 5 years down the road, we are still, tracking and tracing without any legitimate cigarette, sugar. These were the commodities that we wanted to trace. So these are things that are in our control, Sana. These are things that you need to do well so that you can convince the fund that you have a handle. Uh, to make them believe that you want to tax retail instead of your wages, then if you can't register the retailers, then the fund would say, go for the wage reform. So, this is how we need to move. I really the authorities are well aware of this. I know that FPR team, I'm sure they've done some homework in this regard to move forward. And then there is this whole issue where, I think we need to talk to the fund is the expenditure reforms issue, which no one's talking about. The fund's also very heavy on the taxation. We need to do our pensions reform. We need to do our debt reform. We need to do our subsidy reform. There is enough meat there to take money out. All these things need to be done. And we need to have a serious discussion with the fund. I think fund has missed this point in Pakistan of the expenditure reform, and all the emphasis has somehow gone on the fact that the taxation reforms are at the heart of all this. I think now expenditure reforms have also become equally important. So this is the fiscal side that we've dealt.
Yeah, Dr. Khaqan, when we talk about, of course, on the table, there would be discussions about how this money will be recovered from Pakistan in coming years. Of course, IMF would make sure that they are eyeing upon the return of the money they are actually extending to Pakistan. At the time, of course, we know that the talks of expanding the volume of the economy, that would be there. And we know that, of course, people at large, they are facing inflation, and at the same time, joblessness is a factor as well, because different sectors, they are not performing to par, in which, of course, many people are losing jobs. Can we say that the we have a track record of different sort of sectors that are very well performing sectors in Pakistan? I must say, the real estate sector, it does perform really well, and then internal, domestic investors, they are always interested in investing or docking their money on in these kind of sectors, like where they know that in future they can of course get the double of their investments. And that is why there is a tendency of investors to go to Middle Eastern countries and the Western countries to, of course, invest in the real estate sectors rather than in Pakistan. I must say, a city like Islamabad, I have personally experienced it, that every day people are looking for a place to live and rent, and there are issues which are being faced. Reason being, there are not enough buildings that are erected in Islamabad. Why can't we say to the investors, the domestic investors, that this is the real estate sector that we are going to, of course, the vertical expansion, which we always use the term, that can be reintroduced, and different sectors they can allow in a city like Islamabad, where even from people from Karachi, they will be interested to invest money in, and throughout Pakistan they will be interested to invest money in. In that way, not only we are going to, of course, get their accounts or get their saved money come on the streets, in the cities, we can always create some jobs as well for the people. So isn't it a good way forward? And this can be put on the table as well, that these sectors, of course, will be helping to increase the volume.
And Dr. Saab, could you also help us unpack this term real estate sector? How much of this is speculation and how much of it is real investment, because a lot of speculation also goes into the sector. And finally, I had asked another question earlier regarding the timeline. When do you think these talks will mature and we will see the start of the deal, the new program, the EFF?
So my sense on the timing is that they would consult right now. We haven't presented our budget strategy paper. The government has held back. I think the law of the land says that we had to present to the cabinet by May 10th, if I remember correctly. But because the fund's here, so it's better to discuss with them and then come to the cabinet. So I think the larger contours of the budget would be discussed. I think in light of the report that they have given, which for the first time, I think on TV, we have discussed what they are asking. And so quantum of taxation would be agreed. This then would form the basis of Pakistan's new budget. So that budget would be presented and IMF would wait for the budget to be accepted and budget to be passed by the NA. And then I think in July sometime you should be seeing at the earliest a signing of the extended fund facility. The first MEFP should be there. I think that's the timeline because there will be prior actions that you have to take to the budget. There'll be stringent prior actions. There'll be tough prior actions. Once those are passed by the assembly, I think July is a time period in my mind earliest, or maybe August, but by July they should be able to, if they can get all these things done. And I really hope that they are able to negotiate things that are palatable in terms of the constituency of the politicians, as well as, remembering where Pakistan is. We are in a difficult spot where there has been high inflation, where there's been slow growth, where there is a political discomfort on the generally, which is still heightened. So, considering all these, let's have something that everyone can fall in line on the budget. This was a big task for the authorities. I wish them all the best and I hope they can do this. So July, August is this. I can also add something that people are talking about, climate resilient facility. I think that will come much later. So I would leave it at that. I don't think it's going to happen immediately. First, there will be a main EFF program that will come through. The quantum of that program is going to be anywhere north of 6 billion and short of 9 billion. The estimate is there. I've looked at the estimate of the gaps that are there. So something,
EFF.
yeah, the EFF would be.
Okay. And what about the other one, climate?
I think billion to 2 billion, depending on what we can offer, something like that.
Right, Dr. Khaqan, if you can also add to what exactly will be the way forward when it comes to the local business community and the local, of course, investors or traders. And there's lots of discussion, of course, whenever we talk to any industries with regards to the kind of difficulties that they have to face. And I understand that it hasn't been a very easy year or two previously, but given with the kind of circumstances that we're in right now and the kind of demands or conditions or measures that we'll have to take as part of these negotiations, I want to understand how this balance of easing business for industries in Pakistan, as well as increasing gas prices or electricity prices or other measures that we'll have to take because of the IMF, how will this balance be drawn while we're moving towards recovery?
And Dr. Saab, I understand that it is a long list to actually commit to memory, but Faisal's question is also there regarding real estate.
Real estate and how it can obviously affect not only inflation and the joblessness as well, then of course it can help to increase the volume of the economy.
So let's start with Faisal's question. So Faisal was talking about that, how will you bring growth to the economy? What will you do? Are cities a form of growth? So Faisal, when I, Faisal's one of my key supporters, so his question takes precedence over everything else.
Okay.
So Faisal, when I wrote, "Is Pakistan ready for IMF?" my principle number two here was, it's not only about avoiding a default, it's about designing a program that will push the process of a comprehensive set of reforms that push sustainable growth on the agenda. So first, you have to talk to the IMF in this regard. What do you want to do in this? Let's pick up cities, right? There is so much state land in the cities, which has so much value. I have seen PIDE's work on this. I have seen other works in terms of the railway land done by railway folks on this. There are billions of dollars. There is a zoning issue. We don't let people go high. And that's why there is shortage of main areas. We don't let the downtowns flourish as they do in the and I don't want to talk about New York. You talk about Delhi, or you talk about Singapore, you talk about Taiwan or Vietnam, the countries, somewhat like us. So Islamabad doesn't have a downtown, which should have a high rise and a vibrant walkable restaurant market. So you're absolutely right. And there is so much economic value that can be created. The distance people travel on the average to come to office, just think, if that distance is cut, how much fuel bill you'd save. Just think that you don't have to do these horizontal cities, so you're not spreading electricity, your line losses come down. So that's another whole area you've mentioned. It's the most you know eh, overlooked area in the country. Then the growth in Pakistan immediately will come through a lot of deregulation. And I'm now writing my paper on deregulation, and this should be coming soon. And where I try to explain that there has been a successful deregulation for growth that was done by Australia, same kind of issues like ours. After World War II, again a colonial nation. So what was it that they did? I really hope that someone's read this and gone to the IMF and said that we want to deregulate the country. We want to make it easier for the folks inside. We want to make it easier for the folks outside to come and invest in Pakistan. And here, I'm going to say something really important, and you hold me to this. If I start looking at Pakistan's numbers, and I can almost bet my life on this, that no one has looked at the numbers as they will stand 3 years from today. Those numbers are very much there. IMF has put those numbers in the 9 tables they sent to us. The number on the let's pick up the number on the investment side, because that's Faisal's question. What would happen? That number tells me that today what you're doing is about 13.7% in terms of investment to GDP ratio. It is not likely to change much. I should be complaining to the IMF that, you're saying that this is going to remain static, then where is my growth going to come from? So here's a deregulation agenda of the cities that I want to present to you, a deregulation agenda of the manufacturing sector that I want to present to you. Faisal, this is the real talk. But honestly, I'm telling you, because I've been on that table, this talk rarely happens. Authorities rarely come so prepared where they can actually start talking about this kind of deep analysis with the fund, because then you'd really have to do a lot of homework. Private sector efficiency, how you want to bring privatization alone is not going to, we privatize KE, still the issues are there. It's a sectoral issue. The deregulation of the sector has to take place, where B2B contracts are held in energy. The state has to move out. So, this is the most important point that you have absolutely raised. I don't know how much work authorities have done. I don't know how much this will be part of the MEFP, but if it isn't, then it is the work for the government for the next 5 years. And I really hope that they'd put this agenda together. So, really great question. The real estate, lots of money is stuck. There are different, kind of numbers. But the fact is that it's an unproductive sector till we really deregulate and go high, create value. We haven't been able to do this, so we've kind of expanded. We don't have a know your customer in this. You can pick up 10 million, go buy a plot, go open an account with 10 million on the stock exchange or in a bank, and you will face tremendous questions: where the money came from, what's your source of income, where do you work, where's your salary certificate. They would ask you your family tree. So what I'm trying to say is that this unproductive kind of real estate also has to be thought through. These are really good questions. These are really good brainstorming. I think we can bring them to the authorities list of consideration, and in due course they would think about it. Sana's point of Sana, I have a harsh take on price changes. The IMF does not set prices in Pakistan. They just say that OGRA and NEPRA have set these prices. Please do the needful. My harsh take on this has always been so that we take responsibility. The 9 or 10 discos are state monopolies. They go to NEPRA and ask for a 7 rupee price raise, if I'm correct in my assumption that is coming in July. The IMF would say that these 7 rupees, if not passed to the customer, means 700 billion rupees. So please pass them on. Here's where the IMF comes in. The same thing is happening with gas. These are two things that may happen.
Right. Dr. Saab, not a question. Just because you mentioned another paper that you are writing and then you made me jealous by praising Faisal. So I'm going to remind you that I'm still waiting for your signed copies of your books.
Yeah.
Okay.
Remember, you committed.
Yes, I'm committed. Sure.
Yeah.
Right, Dr. Khaqan, but my question remains with regards to the balance that is going to be created for the industries in Pakistan while these price hikes continue. So how exactly will we achieve that, or how exactly do we expect our businesses to grow? And since we're short on time, I'll add another question as well in terms of political stability. While I understand that it's relatively stable compared to before the elections have happened, we have a new government in place and they're of course speaking with the IMF, but there are of course larger concerns regarding political stability that still remain. Is that also something that will influence the way the IMF is negotiating at the moment? Does that something the IMF also carries as it approaches Pakistan?
So, Sana, here's the thing. IMF has already raised concern on this fact and mentioned it very categorically in their note that they sent to us, that heightened political uncertainty, that's the word they use, is a discomfort to them. So, yes, we have to agree that there is an issue there. But here's my response to them. Pakistan's had political uncertainty for the 76 years of its existence. One. Two, they have been to every political party that matters, and I've worked with all three of them. And I, try and stay in touch with all the folks who ask for advice. And all of them are today, I think, agreed on this agenda that with the fund is a smoother sailing than without the fund. So that's the concern. Tomorrow, if there is any kind of program, it would be supported by every political party, though they would say this much hike came, this happened. But they also know that, yes, a better negotiation can always be done, but without a negotiation, there is no path. So that would be my take. But I have to agree, when we did the 13-16 program, one tailwind that we had, there were dharnas and there were issues, and that did cast a shadow at one point. But otherwise, there was a two-third political government with a two-third majority. So whatever we wanted to get done, we pushed through. So this risk is there. It would remain, but everyone's on board that program's the only way forward for us. On the other issue,
Dr. Saab, sorry to cut you. Just to get a proper sense of perspective, do you think that IMF never engages with any politically unstable country?
I don't think that's the case. IMF almost engages with any country that is in need of financial trouble. I'm really glad, Pitafi bhai, that you've asked that question. With the African countries, with Egypt, wherever there has been any discomfort, IMF has engaged. And that's why this is the second point. This should cement our discussion that IMF would stay engaged with Pakistan as long as we do what we commit, and we commit what is doable. So,
Right.
both will.
Dr. Khaqan, last very quick question about, of course, US has said that it will be extending help to Pakistan countering ISIS Khorasan and of course the terrorism. In that context, can we expect that as Pakistan is facing and Pakistan's industries are facing shortages in terms of energy crisis, Pak-Iran gas pipeline, can it be, given away by the US and they won't be having any reservations on it?
So Sana's question still remains, Sana. I think next time we need to do a program on how energy prices would have to be stabilized in the next 3 years. Are there any levers? Right now, it is looking that energy rise would continue, but I think there are levers that the government is trying to pull, so we can talk about it. But right now, it's a difficult bargain. They were looking for 9 cents, our exporters. We're right now looking at 15 or 20 cents in the ballpark. So what are those levers that can help here? And how we can convince the fund. Because remember, we went to the fund with 9 cents and making the cross subsidy go away in the caretaker setup, Sana. So your question becomes important. We came back with a no. So this is a so again, that's an issue of discussion. Sana, so this is exactly how the discussion takes place. So how are you going to convince them? So on the IP pipeline, here's my 2 cents. Look, I think this has to have a diplomatic solution. We have committed to Iran in 2014. There has been a 10-year window that closes in 2024. It would hurt our interest in terms of the payments that we would need to make. So it is a bilateral arrangement. We are short on energy. So with the US also at a trilateral level, because something on another country is going to affect us. And I don't want to entangle Pakistan in another issue. So some diplomatic Foreign Office solution has to come through on this vessel.
Right, absolutely. Thank you very much, Dr. Khaqan, for joining us and being a part of the discussion. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And of course, as we approach the end of the show, we have this influx of questions for you, but thank you for sparing so much time. Faisal, we're going to quickly take a look at the issue with regards to, of course, the way that we're moving forward in terms of our foreign relations as well. And it seems that, of course, with multiple engagements with our neighbors, our relationship with China has been one of the very important ones. And we've seen that the foreign minister is now on his first visit after the elections this year. And this, of course, also means that there's going to be important discussions around trade and investment. What exactly are your hopes from this particular summit that he's there to attend?
Oh, Sana, very high hopes, because the person who's in obviously visiting China right now, of course we know that there will be other foreign ministers of the other countries as well, but at the same time this visit can be considered as a special visit. Reason being, first of all, of course, both of the foreign ministers of the both countries, they will be meeting, and on the sidelines there will be many other foreign ministers meeting with the foreign minister. And we shouldn't be forgetting the current foreign minister is not only deputy prime minister and a very empowered foreign minister, but at the same time he has a background of economic sector as well. He's been our finance minister in past, so he has all of that experience with him. Now when he's having an interaction with multiple foreign ministers in China, I am expecting that it would be very fruitful for Pakistan. Reason being that the man in charge of foreign ministry is, of course, with all of the right capabilities right now. And about China, I mean, with China, since the day one, we have the friendship that is considered as most pivotal and important for Pakistan in terms of defense, in terms of economy, in terms of all of the sectors whichever we talk about. Even in our industrial sector, there is a lot of contribution from Chinese side, and to me I think it would be enhanced in future. And this is the sort of mission foreign minister is having right now, that we are seeking. As we saw a couple of years ago, China increased its volume of trade with with Russia. I'm expecting that this time around Pakistan will be, of course, successfully increasing its bilateral trade with the China. and at the same time CPEC related advancement. I mean, I am seeing that there will be many more avenues that can be, of course, highlighted and talked about. And one very important thing which in recent times has been highlighted again and again, and to my knowledge, work is going to be done on that as well. That is that CPEC can be, of course, interlinked with the Central Asian republics through Afghanistan, and we know that in past, of course, China highlighted with the Taliban regime as well. So I am expecting that CPEC, if it can be interlinked with the Central Asian republics and through there, of course, Russia, it can be an excellent effect on Pakistan's economy as well. Shouldn't be forgetting that we have cultural and religious relations, and of course the regional relations with the countries we are expecting to have enhanced business with, and all of them Central Asian republics, their economies, once having a sort of interaction with Pakistan's economy, it can bring a positive impact on Pakistan's economy as well. So to me, I think it's a very good sort of initiative to go there.
Right. Farrukh, with regards to particularly CPEC and the phase that we have entered now, and then given our discussion with regards to the economic recovery and where we are with the IMF, how do you see the bilateral engagements, particularly in terms of FDI with China, improving given the current scenario? Will they also be looking at what comes out of the IMF negotiations?
Right, Sana. I think it is a fair question. When Faisal started speaking, I thought that if you're going to come to me because there's dearth of time, I will say what he said, right? But then he actually usually somehow finds a way to go to Afghanistan. I hope someday I see him as Pakistan's ambassador to Afghanistan, because then at least somehow he will be satiated. Right now, allow me to actually engage with that point as well, because we keep on creating this white noise about our wishes, and what happens is that there are, of course, this is open television, right, open ears, and we keep on saying these things, and perhaps our detractors in India keep on thinking that maybe we are very close to the idea, and they actually create kind of situation where we cannot progress in that regard. And then what happens? Then they go and they start building a counter to what we are doing. For example, today India has actually taken over control of Chabahar for 10 years, right? What exactly is that supposed to lead to? Because Ashraf Ghani's time, actually Hamid Karzai's time, they built an alternative route to the potential CPEC, right, at that time. And they opened it up in Chabahar. All the roads have connecting it, Chabahar with Afghanistan are there, better than ours. And then they had the idea of going to Central Asia also to counteract Pakistan's possible growth. So I would only request that whatever is defined in the scope of a project, let us keep it at that. Right. And of course, IMF stocks are going to be very important, just to answer your question quickly. And I think both are connected, because in the end, Pakistan also has to pay a lot of money to China. And we have to actually work this wholesome solution where we ensure that everybody is paid properly, and yet Pakistan is not pushed towards the precipice.
Right, absolutely. Thank you, Farrukh, and thank you, Faisal, for always being part of the debate. That's all that we have from the discussion. We'll now see you tomorrow.